I'd like to welcome you to our new podcast show, Relationships. This is John Marola, an ordained minister from Newcastle, Pennsylvania. He is the director of Empower School of Ministry. John, welcome.
Thank you, Ron.
How are you today?
Great, thanks. Good to be here.
Fantastic. John, you and I have had a number of conversations now, and I'm excited about today because of the conversations we get into. Tell us a little bit about the Empower School of Ministry, please.
Sure. Well, I'm a member at New Brighton Christian Assembly, which is about half hour or so north of Pittsburgh. And so about 5 years ago, our pastor mentioned in a meeting that he had a vision to start a school of ministry to raise up ministry leaders. And so I had been feeling in my heart a call or a pull to get involved in that same type of thing, to train leaders. And actually, at the time, I was going back to school, getting my master's in organizational leadership. And I've often been a student of leadership, just doing reading and study on leadership. So I really felt drawn to want to be part of this. So I talked to him afterward, and so we started to have lunch and just meet and just kind of just talk about what this could look like. And so at the end of my program, about a year later from this point, I graduated, and then I was hired by the church part-time to launch this school. And so just through a lot of prayer and just finding some old notes and old things that I had gathered over the years, I was able to get this school started, get the curriculum going, and we started to advertise into market, and we launched with 8 students in 2016. And so now here we are, we're in our 3rd year, and we're not a huge school, but we just love the fact that we're out there helping people find their calling and to discern what those next steps might be in order to live out that calling. And we just feel a responsibility, I guess, at this time in our lives to be able to mentor and to raise up the emerging generation of future ministry leaders.
I love the word mentor. As a young man, I was fortunate. My father used to always encourage me to have mentors that were people I could go to. And of course, Bill Smith was a guy I worked with and grew up with and taught me how to read the stock market, newspaper signs and all that. And lo and behold, one of my mentors became an important factor because I ended up working on Wall Street. Who would ever think?
Wow.
But why do you think mentorship is so important? Because, it seems like a lot of young people don't understand that. And is it a lot of communication is seemingly lost? And I think mentorship can really help that build relationships in that way.
Right. And we were talking about this earlier, too. I do believe that God works through knowing people. And there's this saying that we've all heard for years, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there's maybe like a negative feel to that. But I think that can be a positive thing, too. And I think that God does work through the people that we relate with. I mean, obviously, God is relatable. He's always going to invite us to know him. But I think that whenever God wants to accomplish something, he's going to bring people into your life. He's also going to put you into the path of other people to accomplish his purposes. And so, while we do live in a digital age and a information age when there's so much stuff available out there that you could just always Google search something or just pull up something on the internet, I think there's some things that are just some old-fashioned things that you just can't duplicate, that you just can't substitute. And so that's that one-on-one, that face-to-face encounter. And so that was actually why when we were starting the school, we had looked at maybe doing some online instruction. And so while there's a place for that, and I think it's valuable in some settings, we didn't really want to be that identity of an online program. We really wanted to have the classroom face-to-face instruction because I think there's some things that are better caught than just taught. And
I like that. I do.
Yeah, and so I think that there's just that need for us to see things modeled in front of us and to see and to hear from other people who have been down that road. And so while it's nice to have the opportunity to find things at your fingertips and just pull up information, the danger is that we feel like we don't need other people because we can just always go to the internet and find whatever we need. And so I think that that's a false thing in our current generation, where maybe people are, they're trained that like that's their go-to, that's their default, is just to do an internet search. And I do it all the time too. So I'm not saying it's not a valuable tool. It certainly is, but that's not to replace the one-on-one interaction. That's not to take the place of the people that God puts into our paths to, like you said, mentor us and to pass on the wisdom and to model things for us and to just pick up certain things that we need and to speak into our lives and to just walk alongside of us as we move down that path that God has for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, relationships are just that. They are sacred ground for us to actually find out who we are through relationships. And when we embrace a relationship of any type, it is really your opportunity to find who you want to be there or who you're going to be. And the mentorship in that type of relationship is so important because, as you know, when you teach somebody, you end up learning more about it than the person maybe that you're helping learn.
Absolutely.
So I see that as a real plus in the Empower School of Ministry. When you guys started, how did you draw up the curriculum of how you were going to teach and what you were going to do?
Well, we had some meetings and we just talked about what we wanted the school to look like, what courses we wanted to teach. Obviously, there's many, many things that you could go into. And so, you can't take time for everything. But we had to sort of narrow it down to what we thought were going to be the more important aspects. But so what we really wanted to center on was helping people. It was to help people discover their call,
Mm-hmm.
to get comfortable with knowing God's voice in their life, not only for this season when they're trying to figure that out, but for their entire life. And then also just to own that call, to really embrace it and to really commit to what that call is all about, because it's a lifetime call. It's not just a profession. It's not just a career. It's not just a call just to have a job in ministry or in the marketplace, but it's something that you need to embrace completely. And so we just encourage people to learn what that call is and to own that call and to really commit to it completely, and then to live out that call, because having that call but living that call are two different things. And so I believe that all of us are called, that God has and whenever I say call, I mean that there's a purpose, there's a plan for us. We're not just here just randomly roaming the earth just to find something to do or to just
and so
pay
many
the
people
bills.
find success in their job or in their, yet they're making more money than ever and they're still profoundly unhappy. So
Absolutely.
But let's talk about what you were saying there a little bit, because finding how to tune into those whispers that God's sending us, and to talk about finding your dreams and where you're meant to be in the journey you're on. How do you guys draw that out? I mean, talk about a little bit about that. I mean, just, it takes a long time. At least for me, it was a long time to start to really listen internally to where I'm supposed to be going. They used to call me the bulldog. I would just force my way into places because I thought I could. And, we've talked about this too. You're taught that you could do anything you want as long as you believe in what you're going to do. Well, I think that's great. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But how did you guys come to the curriculum to help people start identifying those whispers or those dreams inside them that God sets forth?
Right. Well, I'm thinking of two things. Basically, the first thing is that we live in a very noisy world, and just a lot of competition, if you will. Just a lot of things that are going to compete for your time, for your attention. And so we just try to encourage our people to turn down the volume, if you will, of the world and just the noise and all the busyness of life, because I believe that God is always reaching out, that He's always speaking to us in certain ways. But if the volume of our life is just too loud, then it's going to get drowned out So we like to get people
And,
to
and don't we kind of see that going on? I mean, you see these kids going from school to soccer practice to, I mean, piano lessons to, I mean, and with the advent of what you're saying, the cell phones and the videos and all that, we're completely embraced in like this non-quiet world anymore. I mean, you go to the library and it's just amazing. It's actually people talking. It used to be a quiet place. In my life, I go to adoration on Tuesday mornings. I started it as
great.
a prayer factor, and it's changed my life. And so I'm really in tune with what you're saying, and embracing that quiet time, that ability to